friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using Mama Elephant's The Wild Roar and Everyday Monkeys. So I've stamped those images out on 2 panels of Catherine Pooler Favorite White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'm going to be coloring with my Copic markers. So there are a lot of critters to tackle in this image, so I'm going to jump right in and start with my yellow combo, which is Y11, Y13, and Y15. Starting with the Y15 on my lion's face, blending out with the Y13, and then filling in with the Y11. Then I'll move down to the lower part of his body below the mane and use that same color combo. I'm also going to color in the little banana skin that the monkey is holding at the same time since it's right there. And then I'm going to move over to my giraffe. So I'm going to use the same combo once again, starting with that Y15, laying in my darkest colors. And most of these critters are facing directly forward, so their shadows are going to be about equal on both the left and the right. That way the darkness is around the edges of their body and their faces stay nice and light so you can make out all of their adorable features. So I'm just coloring carefully around the little spots on that giraffe because I want to do those in another color. Although I probably could have colored right over them because the color I'll end up doing them is dark enough that it could have covered up the yellow. But I'm going to move on now to this little leopard down at the bottom, trying to use my yellow combos for as many critters as I can while I have them out. And that way this image that is so large will just feel a little less daunting because we've already got a good many critters tackled. So I'm going to do the middle stripe on the toucan on his beak, between his head and his beak, and then I'm going to move on to a brown combo, and that is going to be E23, E25, and E27, and I will do the lion's mane. Just trying to figure out where I want those shadows to go, so I put it on the ends of the hair that's kind of flopping down over his forehead and then also under his face. I did that with the E27, and now I am blending out with the E25. And since that E27 is quite dark and can leave behind some harsh lines, I'm coloring in little circular scribbly motions to break up that color and just drag it into the mid-tone. And then I'm going to do the same thing with my E23, just filling in any remaining white space, but also catching over the edge of the E25 and pulling it along with me so that everything blends smoothly. With an image like this, where there's so many critters, I knew that there were going to be a lot of neutral colors, and so I am going to decide which animals I want to do in this darker brown combo, knowing that I'm going to have to use several different brown combos to just break things up, because I don't want 2 critters to be colored exactly the same and then be side by side. So I'm going to move down to the bear in the bottom right corner, and I'll do him with this combo as well. I'm placing my shadows up on the top of his head since he has that goat. Is it a mountain goat? I think it's a mountain goat that is standing on top of him. And so I'm going to go ahead and add some shadow there because he would be covering up part of the top of his head so it wouldn't get as much light. So then I will blend out that E27 with the E25. I'm going to color carefully around his muzzle. I'll do that in a contrasting brown, and then just fill in the rest of him with the E23, also coloring carefully around that little fish in his hands. And then I'm also going to do these little stripes on the top of this little animal over here, which I believe is a prairie dog. I think he looks really cute. And then I'm going to switch to some E30 shades. I'm going to use E30, E31, E33, E35, and E37. I'm going to start with my monkey, and I am going with the darkest shades for his body. So I'm starting with the E37 for his shadows, and then blending out with the E35. There's a lot of shadows for him because there's a lot of critters that are above or on the side of him. There's also that banana. So I'm just being careful to only use a small amount of each shade so that I can fit all three of those in there. I will also use this combo for the Mama Kangaroo. So as I'm coloring with one shade, I'm kind of keeping an eye out for what other critters that I can do that are across the panel, or, you know, just kind of like skipping over several critters so I don't have those same colors next to each other like I mentioned. So as I was coloring the monkey, I thought, okay, I can do this kangaroo, and that way I'm pulling the viewer's eye across the card as they're kind of like connecting colors in their mind. Your eye kind of gravitates toward like colors, so it just draws your eye a little bit more around the scene. So again, I'm starting with that E37, blending out with the E35, and then using the E33 for the highlight. And I want to do the baby a little bit lighter, so I'm not going to color him at the same time. I'll do him separately, but I'm just carefully coloring around that little Roo that's tucked into her pocket. I really love the little details in this image, and that some of the critters have tiny things to hold. Just helps kind of give them a bit more personality. So now I'm starting that baby kangaroo, and I'm using E33, E31, and then E30 for him. So he still looks like his mama, but he's just a little bit lighter. His coat hasn't quite darkened up with age yet. And then I'll move down to my prairie dog in the lower left-hand corner and color the rest of him in as well. I think he's really cute. I like the mix of characters in this stamp set as well. There's a really fun variety of different critters from different continents, and I think it's just fun to see them all together in this group like this. So there's also another smaller bear over in the bottom right hand corner, so I'm going to do him with this lighter combo as well. That's again starting with the E33, blending out with the E31, and then filling in with the E30. And I think that looks really cute on him as well. Then to tie the two bears together, I will also use those three shades for the muzzle of the bear at the bottom right corner. Then I'll take this combo a little bit lighter, keeping the E30 and E31, but adding in the E000. And I'm going to do my monkey's face and also the muzzle on the mama kangaroo. I'll do some of the stripes on the horns of my mountain goat, and I'll do his little hooves to match. So I started with the E31 for all of those, blended out with the E30, and then I'm going to fill in with the E00. So we've got another version of the browns that we've already been using without switching to a whole new color family, so things just tie together a little bit better. Then I'm going to move on to E40, E41, and E42. These are some really pale beige shades, and so I'm going to color in anything that I want to be kind of white or off-white, like the rhinoceros's horn. I'm going to do the mountain goat and the panda bear in this combo. And I'm just using the barest amount of that E42 for those because I really want them to stay looking light. And then I will blend out with that E41, but I'm still leaving a ton of white space because I really want to keep these nice and light. So I'll flick in a little bit of that E40, but I'm actually going to leave a little bit of white cardstock showing on the panda because I want to make sure that he stays looking white. Well, as the horn and the mountain goat, I didn't mind being kind of creamier. I'm also going to do this other cat that's in the middle between the giraffe and the kangaroo. I'm not sure what kind of cat it's supposed to be. We have a tiger down below. Maybe it's just a regular house cat. There are cats all over the world. So I just decided to color him in that same combo just to kind of, again, pull your eye around. And I use that for the inner parts of my koala's ears and for the face and chest of the toucan. So I'm trying to think of anything else that could be in this combo and decided to do the banana and the inside of the skin that's flapped down. And then I'm going to switch back to the browns that I used for the lion and the bear to do the giraffe's muzzle and spots because I didn't want to have the same brown that I had been using in that center area, and since I had less of this darker combo, I just decided to go back to it. So preferably I like to do everything at once, but sometimes with an image like this, when there's just so many things to think about, I don't realize that I might want to color something else with the same combo, and so I just have to go back to it. I also pulled out the E40 for the inner parts of the giraffe's ears, and then I colored in some of the noses with the E27. I'm going to move on to some warm grays, and I'm using W00, W1, and W3, and I will do the koala. He has turned a little bit toward the right, so I'm going to put his shadows heavier on the left. Then I blended out with the W1, and I'm going to fill in with the W00. I think that little koala is super cute. I'm also going to use these shades for my zebra, but I'm going to skip the W3 so he doesn't end up looking too gray and just use the W1 and the W00 to color in the white parts of his body. I'll also do the insides of my elephant's ears because I wanted those to be a little bit lighter than the rest of him. And then I am going to darken up this combo by bringing in the W5, and I will do the rest of my elephant. Just adding in that shadow with the W5, and again he's facing completely forward, so his shadows are pretty equal. Also just adding them on the underside of the trunk, and then where those little ridges are drawn and where it kind of curves around toward the left. And then I will blend that out with the W3. Again, just using those little circular motions to break up the darker color. And then I will fill in the center of his face and his trunk with the W1. And that is going to keep his eyes and his expression super nice and light. Then I'm going to keep the W5, add in the W7 and the W9, and I will do the black parts of my zebra. So I'm going to do 2 of the stripes on his mane and also his hoof and his muzzle, starting with the W9, and then I'll blend out with the W7 as my midtone, and then fill in with the W5. And again, as I'm coloring the zebra, I'm already trying to think ahead to what other critter I can color with this combo to pull the viewer's eye across the card. And thankfully, we have that toucan on the top left. So that will balance this scene out nicely with that nice bold color. So I'll go ahead and color the top of his head and his wing and the side of his body there. And just fill that in. And then I like to use a color at least 3 times if possible, especially if it's a bold and eye-catching one. So I'm going to do the little spots on the leopard with this combo as well. And then we do also have the black of the stamped panda, which we didn't have to color, but that one was just, you know, in the stamp already, but it does also bring in a little bit of black. I'll color in a couple more of their noses, and then I'm going to move on to W00 with E70 and E71, and this is what I'm going to use for my hippo. So for him, I started with the E71, and again, he's facing a little bit more toward the right, so his shadows are going to fall more deeply on the left. And then I'm going to blend out that E71 with the E70, and then I'll fill in with the W00. I forgot to add his shadow under his muzzle, and since it is very prominent, I wanted to go ahead and put that in there. And then I will fill in the rest of him. I'm going to do his muzzle a little bit different in just a minute. But while I have this combo out, I also want to do my rhinoceros. So I'm going to use the same 3 shades in the same order, but this time the rhinoceros is facing a little bit more toward the left, so his shadows are going to fall more prominently on the right. I need to make sure to put a shadow under his horn since that is really large and sticking out, and then blend out with the E70 and fill in with that W00. And again, because we've got that warm gray in there, it really pulls in the warm grays of the other critters that I've done, so it ties them all together while still ensuring that these 2 critters stand out and look unique. I'm going to keep the E70 and E71 and add in the E74 and E77 for my hippo's muzzle. So I'm going to start on the left and blend toward the right, and I am going to use all 4 shades on there. And then I'll switch to some oranges. I'm going to use YR12, YR14, and YR18. And I will do the tip of my toucan's beak, also the parrot's beaks. I'm going to do the stripes on that cat just to tie that color in somewhere else, since most of the areas that I'm coloring in with this combo are really small, with the exception of the tiger. So the tiger is going to be solid orange, so that will really help to pull those little accents in. So I started with the YR18, I'm going to blend out with the YR14, and then I'll use the YR12 to fill him in. I thought it might be fun to also leave some white on his face, but that would have just taken more time in the video, and I was worried that it was already getting too long, so I just decided to color him in solid, but I still think he looks really, really cute. Next, I'll bring in a tiny pop of red with R22, R24, and R29. I'll do that tiny little heart in the panda's hands, and I'll also do the bodies of my parrots. So I am starting with the R29 for those, blending out with the R24, and then filling in with the R22. I'm not doing the wings of my parrots because I wanted to have a contrasting color for those. So I'll color in just the bodies, and then I will bring in my blue combo, which is going to be B21, B23, and B24. I'll do the little fish in the bear's hands, and then I'll do my wings for my parrots. So I put the B24 on the tips of the wings and the bottom of the fish, blend it out with the B23, and then I'll fill in with that B21. So again, just having that little bit of contrast on the wings is going to tie in that little fish, so we at least have 3 little spots on the card where we have that vibrant blue shade. I'll go back to my Y11 for the parrot's bellies, and then all of these critters need some rosy cheeks, so I'll use R11, R20, and R22. Starting with that R22, I'm just going around and placing a little oval shape on their cheek area. And I'm trying to do this quickly because I am nervous about how long the video is getting, but if you go too quick, you get a little bit sloppy, so I didn't get them all exactly in the right spots, but that's okay. I was able to kind of fix it a bit with the blending. This bear, I really went off on his left cheek, but I was able to kind of hide that because he's so dark that it really just kind of blended into his fur, and I just kind of redid the cheek a little bit higher. So once I have the R22 laid in, I'm going to blend out the edges with the R20, kind of softening that into their fur and working my way across that panel until I've got everybody. I missed the little baby bear earlier, so I started with the R20 for him, but I went back and got him later with the R22 so that he matches everybody else. And then I'll go around the edges of the R20 with the R11, which really helps smooth it into their fur tone and just helps it blend really well, especially once this dries back and, you know, settles into the cardstock. Then I'm going to move on to my greenery, and I'm going to use YG01, YG03, and YG05 for the little leaf that is in the leopard's hands, and then I'll do the one that kind of matches it up above. Starting with the YG05, blending out with the YG03, and then filling in with the YG01. I also did the leaf that the koala is holding. Then I'll darken up this combo just a bit by bringing in the YG17, and I'm going to do that other small little leaf, and then I'll use all of these shades on this larger leaf. And then I'm going to do that banana tree that I showed you at the beginning off screen just to save some time in the video because I felt like the video was getting long. And I have colored a banana tree, that exact banana tree before, almost exactly the same in the video where I used the everyday monkeys on a card. So I just went ahead and colored that off screen. But if you'd like to see how I did it, you can go back to that video and I will link it at the very end. So I'm going to take a black Sakura Jelly Roll pen, get that going off to the side, and just go over all of my critters' eyes. This is an extra step, but it really does make them bright and shiny, so I just feel like it brings the critters to life after the coloring, so it's a step that I typically do. And then once I have all of that done, I will trim these images out with their matching dies. For my focal panel, I'm starting with a piece of Bristol smooth surface cardstock that I've trimmed down with the Lawn Fawn outside in stitch rectangle stackables. I used the largest one, and that gives me a little bit of stitching detail around the outside edges, and it also shaves off just a little bit of cardstock. And then I'm going to color this with some Distress Oxide inks, starting with Twisted Citron. And I'm going to bring that in from the top and the two sides. And then I will bring in my next shade, which is going to be Mowed Lawn, and I will lay that right over top, just not completely covering the Twisted Citron. And I'm not taking this too far on this panel yet because I don't want to cover the entire thing. I want to kind of leave a little bit of a glow in the center. My third and final shade is Pine Needles, and I just really want to use the littlest bit of that to darken up the edges, and then I'm going to work my way back down in the reverse, blending out a little bit more with that Mowed Lawn, eating into some of that white cardstock, and then doing the same with my Twisted Citron. And then I'll go back over those edges one last time with the Pine Needles. Then I'm going to distress this panel by adding some water onto an acrylic block, picking that up with a thin paintbrush and tapping that all over the background. I'll let that soak into the inks for about 30 seconds, and then I'll blot that up with a paper towel. So that will lift some of the color in a few places. And then I'm going to press some of the Mowed Lawn onto the block, Mix that up with the water that was still on there and tap that all over the background, making sure I have a nice spray of small little dots there. And then I'll do the same with the twisted citron, just adding a little bit of water to that and tapping that all over the background as well until I have a look that I'm happy with. And then once I am, I will just set this panel aside to dry completely. Once it has, I will pop that in my MISTI so I can stamp my sentiment. And I'm using one from the Mama Elephant Essential Tag Sayings. And I'm going to stamp that down in VersaFine Onyx Black ink because it lays well over the Distress Oxides. And I'm using the one that says Happy Birthday to You because I always need more birthday cards. I stamped that down twice to make sure I had a bold impression, and then I'm going to do an insert for the inside of my card. So I just took another sheet of white cardstock and trimmed it down with the same die that I used for the focal panel. And now I'm going to stamp some images and sentiments from the Everyday Monkeys stamp set in Noble Fur ink. And I did that down at the bottom just for something different, and it also leaves plenty of room to write a greeting to the recipient. So now I'm ready to start assembling. First I'm going to take that insert and glue it to the inside of the card, just getting my Barely Art Precision Glue flowing, and then I will add that to the back and line that up in the center. It's going to leave a little border of that green cardstock showing through. That is Lawn Fawn Noble Fur cardstock as well, and it is scored and folded to a standard A2 size card. So it's 4 1/4 tall by 5 1/2 wide. And then I will line up the focal panel in the center. Just make sure I have the same amount of that green showing on all 4 edges. And then I will grab this large image. I'm only adding glue to the lower 2/3 of it so that I still have room to tuck some things behind. And I'm just going to line that up with the bottom edge of the card and make sure that it's nice and flat. Then I'll take my banana tree and I'm going to slip it back behind between the toucan and the giraffe. It's going to fit nicely in there and help us accent that sentiment nicely. The little palm fronds are actually almost pointing to it. And then I'll take this larger leaf and tuck it into the gap behind the toucan and above the lion and just get the angle how I want it. Then I'm going to use those little parrots as a guide for where to place my last little bits of greenery. So I'm going to figure out my placement for them, but I'm not going to glue them down just yet. Instead, I will take those 2 little bits of leaves and I'm going to tuck those back between the zebra and the mountain goat, just to add a little bit of greenery over toward that right side as well. And now that I'm happy with the placement of everything else, I can go ahead and glue my parrots into place. And I made sure to have one a little bit higher and one a little bit lower, just to add some more interest to the scene. And that is going to finish up this card, so I will lift that up and give you a closer look at all of that detail and give you another peek at the inside. I really love how this one turned out, so I hope you guys enjoyed it too. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell if you want to be alerted when I post new videos. All of the products I used will be listed and linked in the description bar below the video in case you'd like to pick up anything for yourself. And if you'd like to keep watching, here are 2 extra videos I thought you might also enjoy. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you had a good one, and I'll see you soon in the next. Bye-bye.